They threw Coca-Cola on a waitress for fun, unaware her husband was a vampire king. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's dive into the story. In the heart of a busy city, a quiet little diner sat nestled on a corner, often overlooked but cherished by those who knew of its warmth. Inside, the aroma of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon filled the air. It was the kind of place where people would come to unwind, grab a quick bite, or find comfort in the simple routines of life. At a corner table near the window, a waitress named Emily was quietly cleaning up after a busy lunch rush. She was a young woman, in her mid-20s, with a gentle smile that could melt even the iciest of hearts. Despite her cheerful demeanor, life hadn't been easy for her. Emily had a tough childhood, grew up in foster care, and had learned to fend for herself early on. Now, as a waitress, she was doing the best she could to make ends meet. She had always been a hard worker, but the long hours and low wages sometimes wore her down. But despite the challenges, Emily held on to hope and a sense of kindness that made her stand out in a world that often seemed indifferent. As she moved from table to table, balancing her orders and greeting customers, Emily couldn't help but notice a group of men sitting in the corner booth. They were loud, rowdy, and laughing obnoxiously at something one of them had said. Emily had served them once before. They were regulars, always demanding, always rude, but she did her best to smile and keep things moving. Today, however, things were different. One of the men, a tall and muscular guy with a smirk that made Emily uneasy, had been eyeing her since she first walked into the diner. He seemed to be daring her, challenging her with every glance, every word. She brushed it off at first, trying to stay focused on her work. But as time passed, the tension between them grew palpable. Emily could feel it in the air, thick and uncomfortable. She tried to ignore it, but the sense of unease only deepened. Suddenly, one of the men stood up, holding his drink in his hand with a wicked grin on his face. Without warning, he threw the entire glass of Coca-Cola at Emily, drenching her from head to toe. The cold liquid soaked through her uniform, making her gasp in shock. The men around the table burst into laughter, completely oblivious to the humiliation they had just caused. Emily stood there for a moment, frozen, not knowing how to react. She could feel the eyes of the other patrons on her, some with pity, others with amusement. But before she could say a word, something unexpected happened. The door to the diner opened with a soft chime, and in walked a man who seemed to command the room with his presence. He was tall, dressed in a tailored black suit, his eyes cold and piercing. He moved with a quiet grace, like someone who was used to being noticed without saying a word. The moment his eyes locked with Emily's, something in the air shifted. He wasn't like anyone she had seen before. There was an undeniable aura about him, something dark, powerful, and completely out of place in this small diner. The laughter from the group of men died down almost immediately. Emily could see their faces change as they realized who had entered. The man walked calmly toward the counter, his gaze never leaving Emily. He wasn't just another customer. There was something about him, something that made her feel both scared and safe at the same time. Before she could make sense of it, the man approached the table of rowdy men. His eyes flashed with a chilling intensity, and without uttering a word, he raised a hand. The men, frozen in place, suddenly stopped laughing. It was as if an invisible force was holding them in place. They tried to move, to speak, but their bodies wouldn't obey. The air in the diner seemed to grow colder, and the energy shifted completely. Emily watched, stunned, as the man turned back to her with a single, knowing glance. She had no idea who he was, but in that moment she understood that everything was about to change. The man stood in front of the group of rowdy men, his gaze sharp and unyielding. The atmosphere in the diner shifted, the tension rising like an unseen force in the air. The group of men, who had once been laughing and mocking Emily, now found themselves paralyzed, their movements frozen as if time itself had stopped for them. It was as if an invisible power had taken control of their bodies, leaving them helpless in the presence of this mysterious man. Emily, drenched in Coca-Cola, stood in shock, her heart racing. She couldn't quite comprehend what was happening, but something deep inside told her this was no ordinary man. His piercing eyes, like shards of ice, locked onto hers for a moment, and she felt a strange sense of both fear and safety in his gaze. He didn't speak, but his presence alone commanded attention. It was as if he was a king, and the world around him bent to his will. The man turned back to the group, his movements slow and deliberate. He raised a hand, and without saying a word, the men at the table were released from their paralysis, but they didn't dare make a move. The laughter had died the moment he entered the room, replaced by an eerie silence. One by one, the men stood up, their faces pale with fear. They had never encountered someone like him before, and they knew they were no match for his power. They mumbled apologies, their voices shaking, but the man didn't acknowledge them. Instead, he walked toward Emily, his eyes never leaving hers. As he approached, the hairs on the back of her neck stood up, and she instinctively took a step back. She wanted to run, to escape, but something in his presence kept her rooted to the spot. He stopped just a few feet away from her, his gaze softening for the briefest moment before he spoke, his voice deep and soothing, yet carrying an underlying force that made her heart skip a beat. "Are you all right?" His words were simple, but they felt like a lifeline in the storm of emotions swirling inside her. Emily nodded, though she wasn't sure if she was truly okay. She had never been in a situation like this before, and the shock of what had just happened left her feeling dizzy. I'm fine," she said, her voice trembling. The man's expression softened, and for a moment, Emily thought she saw a flicker of something almost human in his eyes. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by the cold, calculating gaze she had first noticed when he entered the diner. Without another word, he turned away from her and addressed the group of men, his voice cold and commanding. "Leave now and never return." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of a king's decree. The men didn't hesitate. They quickly gathered their things and rushed out of the diner, their faces a mixture of fear and confusion. Emily watched them leave, still trying to process what had just occurred. She had been humiliated, drenched in soda, but now, she was left with more questions than answers. Who was this man? And why had he come to her rescue? She barely had time to think before the man turned back to her. "You've been through enough tonight," he said, his voice gentler this time. "Let me help you." Emily blinked, still in disbelief. "Help me? What do you mean?" "Let me take you somewhere safe." "You shouldn't be here alone," he said, his tone still calm but filled with a sense of urgency. Emily hesitated, her mind racing. She didn't know this man, but something in her gut told her that he wasn't dangerous in the way the other men had been. She had no idea who he was or why he seemed to know exactly how to handle the situation, but she couldn't deny that there was something about him that made her feel safe. "Okay," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The man nodded and gestured for her to follow him. As she moved to leave with him, the last remnants of her shock began to wear off, replaced by a gnawing curiosity. Who was he, really? And why had he come to her aid? Emily followed him out of the diner and into the night, her heart still pounding in her chest. The city lights flickered in the distance, but there was a sense of stillness in the air as she walked beside this mysterious man. She had no idea where he was taking her, but she couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change, in ways she couldn't yet understand. "I knew the night would take a strange turn, but I never imagined it would unfold like this." As I followed the man down the darkening streets, the weight of his presence pressed on me like a silent force, pulling me in with every step. He walked with an air of confidence, like he belonged in a world I couldn't even begin to understand. We passed through the quiet streets, the noise of the diner fading behind us, replaced by the soft sounds of the city at night. My heart raced, not from fear, but from a strange mixture of confusion and curiosity. Who was he? What was he? I couldn't help but wonder as I struggled to keep up with his long strides. As we turned a corner, he glanced at me, his eyes still piercing, but softer now. "You don't need to worry," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. "No one will harm you again." The words were simple, yet they carried a weight that made me believe him. There was something about him, something almost otherworldly, that made me feel like I was safe in his presence. The thought should have frightened me, but it didn't. Instead, I felt protected. We stopped in front of an old building, its stone facade looming over us. It looked like something out of a history book, ancient and untouched by time. The man reached for the door, his hand brushing against the brass handle. "Come inside," he said, pushing the door open. I hesitated for a moment, my instincts telling me to turn back. But something held me there. Maybe it was the desperation for safety, or maybe it was the trust one had unknowingly placed in him. I stepped inside. The interior was just as grand as the exterior. Dark wood paneling lined the walls, and the scent of aged leather and polished furniture filled the air. The soft glow of candlelight illuminated the space, casting long shadows across the room. The man led me through the entryway into a large living room, where a fire crackled in the hearth. He motioned for me to sit on one of the plush chairs. "You're safe here," he said, his voice a little softer this time. "I know this is all a lot to take in, but trust me, you'll be okay." I sat down, still in disbelief at everything that had happened. My mind raced with questions, but I couldn't bring myself to ask them just yet. The man took a seat across from me, studying me with an intensity that was both unnerving and comforting at the same time. "You're wondering who I am," he said, breaking the silence. "And why I helped you." I nodded, unable to speak. My throat felt tight, as if the words I wanted to say were trapped inside. "I am not who I seem to be," he continued, his gaze never leaving mine. "But I have my reasons for helping you. I've been watching over you for some time now, though you never knew it." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. "What do you mean?" I finally managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. "I've been watching you." He nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "You've been through a lot, Emily. Too much for someone as young as you. And I couldn't just stand by and watch you suffer. I never intended for things to play out like this, but sometimes things happen for a reason." My mind spun as I tried to process his words. How could he know my name? How could he know anything about me? "I don't understand," I said, shaking my head. "Who are you? What do you want from me?" The man looked at me for a long moment, as if contemplating how much to reveal. "My name is Lucian," he said finally, "and I am not human." I stared at him, my heart skipping a beat. The words hung in the air, and I wasn't sure whether I should laugh or run. But there was something in his eyes, something that told me he wasn't lying. "I know this is hard to believe," he said, his tone gentle. "But you're not safe out there. Not anymore." "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice trembling. "What's happening?" Lucian leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowing. "There are people who would use you. People who would hurt you to get to me. And I won't let that happen." I swallowed hard, my mind racing. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing," he replied softly. "I want to keep you safe. I want to make sure you're protected." There was something in his voice, a rawness that made my heart ache. I didn't understand what was going on, but I couldn't deny the overwhelming sense of comfort I felt in his presence. "I'll keep you safe, Emily," he said quietly, as if trying to reassure me. "No matter what happens." I nodded slowly, still unsure of everything, but something deep inside me told me to trust him. I didn't know why, but I did. Lucian's words hung in the air, heavy with meaning, and I sat there, trying to process everything. It was all too much to take in, too much to wrap my mind around. One moment, I was just a waitress, trying to make ends meet, and now I was in the presence of a man who claimed he wasn't human, who said he had been watching over me for some unknown reason. My heart still raced from the events earlier that night. The Coca-Cola being thrown on me, the group of men laughing and mocking me, and then Lucian's sudden appearance, his presence calming and frightening all at once. I wanted to ask him so many questions, but the words wouldn't come. How could I even start to ask about something so impossible? "I know this is overwhelming, Emily," Lucian said, his voice breaking through my thoughts. "But you need to understand. You're not just some ordinary girl anymore. You've caught the attention of forces much bigger than you can imagine." His words were chilling, but the way he spoke, calm, certain, made me feel as if he knew exactly what he was talking about. It made me wonder what kind of world I had stepped into. "What do you mean?" I finally managed to ask, my voice trembling. "Who are these people you're talking about? What do they want with me?" Lucian's eyes softened, but his expression remained serious. "There are those who seek power, Emily, and they will do anything to obtain it. You, by accident, are now caught in their game." I stared at him, confused. "I don't understand," I said, shaking my head. "I'm just a waitress. I don't have anything they would want." Lucian leaned forward, his eyes intense. It's not about what you have. It's about who you are. And who you are is more important than you realize. His words struck me like a punch to the gut. I had no idea what he was talking about. I'm nothing special, I said almost to myself. Just a girl trying to get by. You're much more than that, Lucian said softly, almost as if speaking to himself. And they know it. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I had no idea what he meant, but there was something in his tone, something in his eyes, that made me believe him. Lucian stood up, pacing across the room, his movements graceful and deliberate. I can't explain everything to you right now, he said, his back turned to me. But there are people in this world, vampires, like me, who want control. They've been watching you, and you've caught their eye. What does that mean for me? I asked, fear creeping into my voice. What do they want with me? Lucian stopped and turned to face me. His expression was grave. They want to use you. And if they can't use you, they'll eliminate you. The words felt like a slap in the face. But why me? I whispered. What have I done? It's not about what you've done, Emily, Lucian said, his voice low. It's about what you're capable of. What you don't even know yet. I shook my head, overwhelmed. I don't understand. What could I possibly have that they want? Lucian's eyes narrowed. I can't tell you everything now. But I can protect you. I can keep you safe, Emily. I looked at him, searching his face for any sign that this was some kind of joke, but there was none. He was serious, and I could feel it. I don't know if I can believe you, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. How can I trust you? Lucian took a step toward me, his expression softening. You don't have to trust me right now, but I'm not asking for your trust. I'm asking for your safety. And if I don't go with you? I asked, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Lucian's gaze hardened, the warmth in his eyes vanishing. Then you'll be alone. And the people who are after you will find you. I swallowed hard, the weight of his words sinking in. So what happens now? I asked, the fear in my voice barely contained. Lucian stood tall, his figure casting a shadow over me. You come with me, and we figure this out together. The decision weighed on me, heavy and terrifying. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but something in my gut told me that this was the only way to survive. I nodded, my voice barely a whisper. Okay. Lucian's expression softened just slightly, though there was no warmth in his eyes, only determination. Good, he said. Let's go. Without another word, he turned and led me out of the room. As we left the safety of the mansion's warmth, I couldn't help but wonder what kind of world I had just entered, and what would happen next. All I knew was that I was no longer just a waitress in a small diner. I was part of something much bigger, something dangerous, and there was no turning back now. The night air was cool as we walked through the dimly lit streets. Lucian moved ahead of me with purpose, his tall frame casting long shadows against the walls. I could barely keep up, my mind still reeling from everything that had happened. The diner, the Coke thrown at me, the man who somehow knew more about me than I could ever understand. My feet moved automatically, following him without question, though I had no idea where we were going. I didn't know who I was anymore, let alone what kind of world I had just entered. All I knew was that I couldn't go back to the life I had before. I couldn't go back to being just Emily the waitress. Something inside me had shifted, and I didn't know if I was ready for the changes that lay ahead. Lucian glanced back at me, his piercing eyes meeting mine. You're not alone anymore, he said, his voice soft but firm. I'm here, and I won't let anything happen to you. His words were reassuring, but they also made me feel the weight of the world pressing down on me. I don't know what's going on, Lucian, I admitted, my voice trembling slightly. Who are these people? What do they want with me? Lucian's expression darkened, and he turned back to face the path ahead. The people I'm talking about, he began, his voice steady, are powerful, and they'll stop at nothing to get what they want. They've been watching you, Emily. You've caught their attention. Why me? I asked, my heart racing. I don't have anything they want. I'm just a waitress. It's not about what you have, Lucian replied, his voice low. It's about who you are. Who I am. I repeated, confused. What do you mean? Lucian stopped walking for a moment, turning to face me. There are things about you that you don't know. Things I can't explain yet. But believe me when I say, you're special, Emily. And they want to control you. I swallowed hard, trying to process his words. Control me? Why? What could I possibly have that they want? Lucian stepped closer, his eyes never leaving mine. You have power, Emily. More than you realize. And there are those who would do anything to harness that power. I shook my head, still unable to understand. I'm not special. I don't have any powers. I'm just trying to survive, like everyone else. Lucian's eyes softened, and he placed a hand on my shoulder, his touch surprisingly gentle. You may not see it yet, but you're more than just a survivor. You have a connection to something ancient, something that runs deeper than blood. And that's why they're after you. My mind was spinning. I felt like I was drowning in information I couldn't fully comprehend. I had always thought of myself as ordinary, someone just trying to get by. But now, Lucian was telling me I was anything but. But I'm just me, I whispered. I'm nobody. Lucian sighed, his gaze softening. You're not nobody, Emily. You're someone who matters. You've always mattered, even when you didn't know it. I couldn't wrap my head around what he was saying. I had never been someone important, never been someone with power. I was just a girl from a small town, working hard to make ends meet. And now, Lucian was telling me I was part of something much bigger. I don't know if I can do this, I said quietly. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this. Lucian's hand tightened on my shoulder, his gaze steady. You don't have to be strong right now, he said. You just need to trust me. I'll help you find your strength. We continued walking in silence, the city lights flickering in the distance. I had no idea where we were going, but I knew one thing for sure. My life had changed in ways I couldn't even begin to understand. We finally reached an old, grand building that seemed to appear out of nowhere. It stood in stark contrast to the modern city around it, its stone walls weathered with age. Lucian opened the door, and I stepped inside, the weight of the night sinking in. The interior was dark but elegant, with tall ceilings and heavy curtains that blocked out the light. There was an old-world charm to the place, but it also felt alive. Welcome, Lucian said, his voice echoing in the silence. This is where you'll be safe for now. My heart pounded as I looked around, unsure of what to make of this strange place. Safe? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. From what? Lucian's eyes darkened. From everything. From them. He paused for a moment, then added, and from yourself. The last part of his sentence hung in the air, heavy and mysterious. I had no idea what he meant by it, but the unease that had been building inside me only grew stronger. I wanted to ask him more questions, to demand answers, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I nodded silently, too exhausted to say anything else. Lucian guided me through the building, leading me to a small room at the back. It was simple, but cozy, with a soft bed and a warm fire crackling in the hearth. He turned to face me before leaving. Rest, he said. Tomorrow, we begin to uncover the truth. And I promise you, you'll understand everything soon. As he closed the door behind him, I sank onto the bed, my mind racing. What truth? What had I gotten myself into? The weight of the world seemed to press down on me, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly out of control. But in the midst of all the uncertainty, one thing was clear: my life would never be the same again. The morning came slowly, the faint light creeping through the heavy curtains that covered the windows of my new room. I woke up, the events of the previous night flooding back into my mind, and I lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of everything. Lucian, the mysterious man who had come to my rescue, had promised me safety. He had taken me to this strange, grand building, telling me it was the only place I would be safe. But safe from what? Who were these people he was talking about? What did they want from me? I sat up slowly, still dressed in the same clothes I'd been wearing when the whole crazy night had started. The cold morning air made me shiver as I swung my feet onto the floor. The room was silent except for the occasional crackle of the fire in the corner. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was in some sort of dream. Except it was too real, too terrifying. I had always led a simple life, working at the diner, dealing with rude customers, scraping by. But now, I was caught in a world I didn't understand. A world where vampires, like Lucian, existed. A world where I wasn't just a waitress. I was something more. The thought made me feel both terrified and strangely empowered. I stood up, my legs weak as I made my way to the door. As I opened it, I found Lucian waiting for me, his expression unreadable. He was dressed in a dark suit, the same cold, commanding presence that had made me freeze in place the night before. "Morning," he said, his voice low, almost as if he were testing the waters. "How did you sleep?" I hesitated, unsure of how to answer. How could I sleep after everything that had happened? How could I pretend that everything was normal when I felt like my entire world had shifted? I'm still trying to process everything, I said, my voice shaky. I'm not sure what's going on. Lucian nodded as if he had been expecting this. It's a lot to take in, I know, but we'll go slow, one step at a time. I looked at him, trying to understand the man standing before me. What are you really? I mean, you said you're not human. But what does that even mean? Lucian's eyes softened for a moment, but then he stepped closer, his tone turning serious. I'm a vampire, Emily. But I'm not just any vampire. I've lived for centuries, and I've seen things that no one should ever have to see. I'm not like the others. I've chosen a different path. His words hung in the air between us, and for a moment, all I could do was stare at him. A vampire. I had read about them in books and seen them in movies, but I never thought they could be real. And yet, here I was, talking to one. So, you're saying that you've been alive for hundreds of years? I asked, trying to wrap my mind around the idea. How is that even possible? Lucian sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. There's much you don't understand. I can't explain everything right now, but I'll tell you this. There are vampires, and then there are vampires like me. I've made choices that set me apart from the rest. I don't feed on humans. I don't live for power and destruction. But others, they do. He looked down for a moment, his gaze distant. And that's where you come in. I frowned, unsure of where this was going. Me? I asked. What do you mean? Lucian met my eyes, his expression now intense. You're special, Emily. There's something about you that they want. I don't fully understand it myself, but I do know this. You're connected to something ancient. Something they won't stop until they control. The words hit me like a blow. Connected to something ancient? Me? A waitress from a small town? I don't feel special, I said, shaking my head. I'm just a regular girl. I don't even know what you're talking about. Lucian's face softened, and he took a step closer, his voice gentle. You will in time. But for now, just know this. I'm here to protect you. I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe. His words were comforting, but they also made me feel vulnerable in a way I hadn't felt before. It was a lot to take in. How can I trust you? I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. Lucian looked at me, his eyes filled with sincerity. I know it's hard to believe, but trust is something you don't have to give all at once. All I ask is that you trust me enough to let me help you. You're not alone in this, Emily, and you don't have to face it alone. I nodded slowly, still unsure of everything, but feeling the weight of his words. He was offering me something I hadn't had in years, protection, safety, and in a world where everything felt out of control, that was enough. What now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Now, we prepare, Lucian replied, his expression hardening once more. There's a lot more to this than you realize. But first, we need to make sure you're ready. Ready for what? I wondered, but I didn't ask. Lucian's presence was enough to make me feel like maybe, just maybe, I could survive whatever came next. As he led me through the corridors of the mansion, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life was changing in ways I couldn't predict. But one thing was clear, I wasn't just a waitress anymore. I was part of something far bigger, and I had no choice but to face it head on. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty, but Lucian's presence offered a strange kind of reassurance. Each morning, I woke to the same heavy feeling of confusion, unsure of what to expect next. The mansion, with its dark corridors and old-world charm, became both my sanctuary and my prison. The further I ventured into this new world, the more I realized how little I knew about it, and how much I was still learning. Lucian had made it clear that I was not safe. There were forces out there that would stop at nothing to control me, and I had to be prepared for whatever they might throw my way. Every day he trained me, not physically, though I was sure that was coming soon, but mentally. He taught me about the vampires who ruled in the shadows, about the ancient laws that governed them, and about the power I unknowingly held within me. It was all so overwhelming, and each night I lay awake, the weight of it pressing down on me. The truth was, I had no idea what was happening to me. But Lucian was patient. He never pushed too hard, never asked for more trust than I could give. And that made me trust him just a little bit more each day. One evening, after yet another long day of lessons, Lucian called me into his study. It was a large room, lined with shelves filled with ancient books and artifacts. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting flickering shadows on the walls. Lucian sat behind a massive wooden desk, his fingers drumming softly against the surface. He looked up as I entered, his eyes sharp and calculating. But there was something else there too, a hint of something I couldn't place. "Sit," he said, his voice low. I hesitated for a moment before taking a seat across from him. "I've been thinking about how much you're ready for," Lucian began, his gaze never leaving mine. "And I think you're ready for more. I've kept you in the dark for too long, Emily. But it's time you understood the stakes." I swallowed hard, suddenly feeling the weight of his words. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice tight with anxiety. Lucian leaned forward, his hands clasped in front of him. "You're a part of something bigger, Emily. You always have been. And now, they know about you. They've been watching you for some time." "Who?" I asked, my pulse quickening. "Who's watching me?" Lucian's eyes darkened. "There are factions in the vampire world. Some of them are old, ancient even. They have their own agendas, and they'll do anything to see them through. And you, Emily, are a key player in their plans. They think you're a weapon, something they can use to gain more power." My stomach churned at the thought. A weapon? I wasn't anyone's weapon. "But I don't even know what's happening," I protested, shaking my head. "How could they think that about me? I'm just a girl." Lucian's expression softened, but there was no warmth in his eyes. "You're not just a girl, Emily. Not anymore. You're a part of something much older than you could ever imagine. And you need to learn to control it before they do." I didn't know what to say to that. I wasn't part of anything. I was just a waitress trying to survive in a world that suddenly felt much bigger and more dangerous than I could handle. "How am I supposed to control something I don't even understand?" I asked, my voice cracking with the frustration I had been holding in for so long. Lucian's gaze was unwavering. "You're not alone in this. I'll help you," he said. "But you need to trust me. You need to trust yourself." I looked at him, searching for any sign that he wasn't just playing some kind of game with me. But there was nothing. Just the same calm determination that had been there from the beginning. And for the first time, I felt a flicker of something deep inside me. Maybe it was trust, or maybe it was something else entirely. But in that moment, I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't back down now. "Okay," I said, my voice steady for the first time in days. "What do I need to do?" Lucian nodded once, his expression still unreadable. "We start tonight," he said. "There's a place where we can begin your training. It's time for you to learn what you're truly capable of." I stood up, the resolve inside me growing. "I'm ready." Lucian stood as well, his eyes locking onto mine with a fierceness that sent a shiver down my spine. "Then let's go," he said. And with that, we left the study, stepping into a world where danger was always lurking, and where the only way to survive was to embrace the power within. I didn't know what the future held, but I was done being afraid. I was done being just Emily. Tonight, I would take the first step into a world I never knew existed, and I would fight for my place in it. Lucian led me through the winding corridors of the mansion, his presence commanding and unyielding. The dim lighting cast shadows on the walls, and the air felt thick with the weight of unspoken secrets. I followed him, my footsteps hesitant but determined, my heart pounding in anticipation of what was to come. Every step seemed to echo, reminding me that I was no longer the same person who had walked through these halls just a few days ago. That Emily was gone, and this new Emily, the one who was about to face a world she didn't understand, had to be strong. Lucian stopped in front of a heavy wooden door, turning to face me with a steady gaze. "This is where you'll begin," he said, his voice low but filled with purpose. He opened the door, revealing a small room with a single table in the center, surrounded by various weapons and ancient-looking artifacts. There was a map of the city pinned to the wall, and books stacked neatly on shelves. "What is this place?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "A training room," Lucian replied. "Here, you will learn how to defend yourself, how to use the power inside you, and how to survive in a world where danger is always lurking." The thought of being trained in combat, of learning how to fight and protect myself, felt foreign to me. But then, the reality of the situation hit me. Lucian was right. I had no choice. The people who were after me wouldn't hesitate to destroy me if they thought I was weak. "Are you sure I'm ready for this?" I asked, looking around the room at the weapons. "I don't even know where to start." Lucian walked over to the table and picked up a dagger. "You're more ready than you think, Emily. You have strength inside you, something you've never tapped into before." but it's there, waiting to be unlocked. He held the dagger out to me, its blade gleaming in the dim light. Take it. I hesitated for a moment, staring at the weapon in his hand. I had never held a knife, let alone used one. But something in Lucian's gaze pushed me forward. I reached out, my fingers brushing the cool steel of the dagger. The moment I touched it, I felt a surge of energy coursing through me, like a fire igniting in my veins. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it was there. The power was real. I gripped the dagger tightly, feeling a rush of adrenaline. Good, Lucian said, nodding approvingly. Now let's begin. He guided me through basic stances and movements, showing me how to hold the dagger and how to move fluidly. At first, my movements were awkward, clumsy even, but Lucian's patience was unwavering. He corrected my posture, guided my hand, and encouraged me to keep going. As the hours passed, I started to feel a shift inside me. The power I had felt when I first held the dagger began to grow stronger, more natural. My movements became more confident, more controlled. Lucian watched me closely, his eyes never leaving me as I practiced. You're improving faster than I expected, he said, a rare hint of approval in his voice. You're not just learning to fight, Emily. You're learning to harness your power. His words hung in the air, and I felt a strange sense of pride swell inside me. But the feeling was quickly replaced by doubt. What if I'm not strong enough? What if I can't do this? I asked, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to remain calm. Lucian's expression softened, and he stepped closer to me. You're stronger than you think. You've already shown that. The power inside you is a gift, but it's also a burden. It will require sacrifices, and it will test you. But I believe in you, Emily. His words were like a lifeline, and for the first time, I began to believe in myself, too. I wasn't just a scared girl anymore. I was becoming something more. As the days passed, Lucian continued to train me. Each session was grueling, but I pushed through, determined to master my new skills. The mansion became my second home, and Lucian became not just a teacher, but something more, a protector, someone I could rely on when everything else seemed uncertain. One afternoon, after a particularly intense training session, Lucian took me to the mansion's courtyard. The sun was setting, casting a warm orange glow across the sky. The courtyard was quiet, serene, with a fountain in the center and lush greenery surrounding us. Lucian stood beside me, his gaze fixed on the horizon. You've come a long way in such a short time, he said, his voice soft, almost reflective. But there's still much more to learn. I know, I said, looking at him. But I'm scared. What if I fail? Lucian turned to face me, his expression serious. Failure is part of the journey. You can't succeed without facing your fears, without pushing yourself beyond your limits. And you won't be alone in this, Emily. I'll be here with you every step of the way. His words gave me strength, but the reality of the situation was still daunting. The vampires who were after me weren't going to wait forever. I had to be ready. I'll keep training, I said, determination settling in my chest. I won't stop until I'm ready. Lucian nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his lips. That's the spirit. As we stood in the courtyard, the cool evening air settling around us, I realized something. I wasn't just training to survive. I was training to fight. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid to face the darkness head-on. The following days blurred together as I continued my training under Lucian's watchful eye. Each day felt like a battle, but not in the way I had imagined. It wasn't about physical strength or mastering weapons. It was about something deeper, something I hadn't realized existed inside me until now. The power I had been warned about was growing. Every time I picked up a weapon, every time I focused, I felt it stirring. Within me, like a fire slowly igniting in the pit of my stomach. It wasn't just a skill I was learning, it was a force. I wasn't just training to survive anymore. I was training to become something else. I had no idea what that something was yet, but I could feel the shift within me. Lucian never explained much about my power, but as the days passed, I began to understand that it was more than just my connection to the vampire world. It was tied to something ancient, something hidden beneath the surface of this world that even Lucian had yet to fully grasp. Each session grew more intense. Lucian was patient but relentless. He pushed me to limits I didn't know I had, not just physically, but mentally. There were times when I felt like I couldn't go on, like the weight of it all was too much. But every time I thought about quitting, I thought about the people who were after me, about the power they wanted, about the danger they posed. I couldn't stop. I wouldn't stop. One evening, after an exhausting day of training, Lucian took me outside to the courtyard once again. The cool night air greeted us as we stepped onto the stone pathway, and for the first time, I felt a small sense of peace. The world felt quieter here, almost as if the weight of everything I was learning could be temporarily put on pause. Lucian stood beside me, his expression unreadable as usual. "You've come far, Emily," he said, his voice low. "But you're not there yet." I nodded, not surprised. He had always been straightforward with me, and I had learned to appreciate that. I was far from ready, I knew that. "I feel like I'm barely scratching the surface," I admitted, my voice tinged with frustration. "I don't understand everything. I don't know how I'm supposed to control this power. What if I can't?" Lucian turned to face me, his eyes intense, as if he could see straight through me. "You will control it. You've already shown that. The power you have isn't something you can just use on a whim. It requires discipline, focus, and understanding." I sighed, feeling the pressure of his words settling deep within me. "But how do I understand it when I don't even know what it is?" I asked, almost pleading for an answer. Lucian didn't speak right away. He seemed to be thinking, searching for the right words. "It's not just about training your body. It's about training your mind. The power inside you is not meant to be used recklessly. It's a force of nature, and it can destroy everything in its path if you don't learn to control it." His words hit me harder than I expected. The idea of destroying everything around me was terrifying. I couldn't imagine being capable of something like that, but I knew he was right. "But I don't want to destroy anything," I said quietly, my voice barely a whisper. "I just want to survive." Lucian's gaze softened, and he placed a hand on my shoulder. "I know, but surviving isn't enough, Emily. Not anymore. You need to learn to protect what matters, and to fight for what's right." I looked up at him, my mind racing. "And what about you?" I asked, my voice shaky. "What if you're not here when I need you? What if I have to face this on my own?" Lucian's face hardened, the usual calmness replaced by a fierce determination. "You won't face it alone. I will always be with you, and I'll make sure you're ready for whatever comes next." His words carried a weight that reassured me in a way nothing else had. I had never been truly alone in this. Lucian was right there with me, every step of the way. "I don't know if I can ever be ready," I said, my voice trembling. "I'm just a girl. I'm not some warrior." Lucian's gaze softened, and he smiled for the first time in days. "You're more than that, Emily. You always have been." The smile was fleeting, but it gave me something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. I still had a long way to go. The power inside me was still a mystery, and the dangers that awaited us were very real. But in that moment, standing beside Lucian in the quiet of the courtyard, I realized something. I wasn't just fighting for my survival anymore. I was fighting for the future. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid. The following days felt like a blur, each one blending into the next as I struggled to adapt to my new reality. The mansion had become both my sanctuary and my prison. Lucian's training sessions were becoming more intense, pushing me further than I ever thought possible. Each day was filled with new lessons. Lessons about power, about control, about the darkness that lurked just beneath the surface of our world. But no matter how hard I trained, no matter how much I learned, there was still a part of me that was terrified. I was changing, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for what was coming next. My connection to the vampire world was undeniable. Lucian's words about my power echoed in my mind every night as I lay in the silence of my room. I didn't know what it was, this power that ran through my veins. I didn't know how to control it, but I could feel it growing stronger. And with that strength came a new fear. What if I lost control? What if I became the thing I feared most, the very monster that I was supposed to protect myself from? The thought haunted me. It was on the third night of my training when things took a turn. Lucian had told me that we were ready to face the next phase, that it was time for me to learn what it truly meant to be part of this world. "Tonight, Emily, we go beyond just physical training," he said, his voice calm but filled with an edge of urgency. "It's time for you to learn how to tap into your full potential." I stood there, facing him, my heart pounding in my chest. "What does that mean?" I asked, my voice shaky. Lucian stepped closer, his eyes darkening with the seriousness of what he was about to reveal. "It means you have to learn how to connect with the power inside you. You can't just rely on weapons or strength. You need to tap into the deeper magic that runs through your blood. That's where your true power lies. The word sent a chill through me. Magic? Me? I had never believed in anything like that. But after everything I had seen, after everything Lucian had told me, how could I deny it? Lucian continued, his voice softer now. The first step is learning to feel the energy around you. You must learn to feel what others can't. Trust your instincts, Emily. Your power isn't just a weapon, it's a part of you. It always has been. It's time you accepted it. I nodded, though I wasn't sure what I was getting myself into. Lucian led me to a large, open space in the mansion, where the air seemed to vibrate with energy. He motioned for me to stand in the center of the room. Close your eyes, he instructed. Focus on your breathing. Let go of everything else. Focus on what's inside you. I did as he said, closing my eyes and trying to clear my mind. I took a deep breath, focusing on the air filling my lungs, the steady rhythm of my heartbeat. At first, it was hard to clear my thoughts, the noise of my doubts and fears swirling around in my mind. But Lucian's voice cut through the chaos. Let go of your fear, Emily. You're stronger than this. Trust yourself. I exhaled slowly, pushing aside the thoughts that clouded my mind. Slowly, I began to feel it, a subtle shift in the air around me. It was faint at first, but it was there, like a current running beneath the surface, waiting to be tapped into. I felt the energy, the pulse of something ancient, something alive. It wasn't just a feeling, it was a presence. A force that had always been there, just waiting for me to notice. Good. Lucian's voice came, low and steady. Now reach for it. Feel it with your mind. Feel it with your heart. I stretched out my senses, reaching out for the power that swirled just beyond my fingertips. The energy felt like a living thing, humming with life, waiting for me to claim it. As I focused, I felt the power surge within me, a spark that ignited a fire deep inside. I gasped, my body trembling as the power coursed through me. It wasn't just inside me. It was all around me, connected to everything. I could feel it now. Let it in, Lucian encouraged, his voice distant but close at the same time. Feel it fill you. Let it guide you. The power was overwhelming. I could feel my hands shaking as the energy surged, building inside me like a storm. I thought I might lose control, but Lucian's voice was a grounding force, keeping me centered. Slowly, I felt the energy begin to settle, flowing through me, calm but potent. I opened my eyes, and for the first time, I saw the world differently. The air felt alive with possibilities, with power. You've done it, Lucian said, his voice filled with pride. You've connected with the magic inside you. I stood there, trembling, both from the rush of power and from the overwhelming realization that my life was never going to be the same. I was no longer just Emily, the waitress. I was something else, something more dangerous, something with power that could change everything. But with that power came a responsibility to control it, to use it wisely. What now? I asked, my voice small in the vast room. Lucian's gaze was steady, unflinching. Now, we begin to train you to control it. We need to prepare you for what's coming. I nodded, feeling the weight of his words sink in. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I wasn't going to face it unprepared. I had the power to change everything, and I was ready to learn how to wield it. Days passed, and the mansion slowly started to feel more like home. Despite the weight of the new world I had entered, I found a strange sense of comfort in Lucian's presence. He had kept his promise to train me, and I was learning things I never thought possible. Each day, we worked together, honing my skills, building my strength, and guiding me through the chaos of my new reality. Lucian was patient, but his lessons were intense. He pushed me harder than I ever thought I could go, forcing me to face my deepest fears, both physical and mental. The power within me, the magic I had only just begun to understand, was growing stronger with each passing day. But with it came a sense of responsibility I had never anticipated. I wasn't just learning to defend myself anymore. I was preparing for something bigger. Lucian had made it clear that the dangers I faced were not just personal. There were other vampires, other factions, who would stop at nothing to gain control of me. My power wasn't just a tool. It was a weapon, and if I didn't learn to control it, it could destroy everything. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned a deep shade of purple, Lucian led me to the training room once again. The air was heavy with the tension of what was to come. "Tonight," he said, his voice low and commanding, "we're going to take your training to the next level." I nodded, feeling the familiar rush of fear and excitement building inside me. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Lucian's gaze darkened as he stepped closer. "Tonight, you'll learn to fight without relying on your magic. You need to understand that the world you're about to enter doesn't always operate on your terms. Sometimes, you'll have to fight with your hands, your instincts, and your mind. Magic will only take you so far." He handed me a set of gloves, their material sturdy and worn. "Put these on. You're going to learn how to fight without the magic. Tonight, we're focusing on you." I took the gloves from him, the weight of his words sinking in. I had always relied on the idea that my power would save me, that I wouldn't have to face the world alone. But now, I was being asked to face my fears without the safety net of my magic. Lucian had trained me to harness the energy inside me. But this was different. This was about survival. As I slipped the gloves onto my hands, I could feel the intensity of the situation settle into my bones. Lucian led me to the center of the room, his eyes never leaving mine. "I'm going to push you tonight, Emily," he said, his tone serious. "You have to trust yourself. Trust that you are capable of more than you realize." I squared my shoulders, trying to steady my nerves. I didn't know if I was ready, but I knew I had no choice. Lucian took a step back, his body positioning itself into a defensive stance. "When you're ready, come at me," he said, his voice calm but filled with a quiet challenge. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to approach him. I had never fought anyone like this before. I had trained with weapons, practiced stances, and learned to control my power. But this was something entirely different. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to calm my racing thoughts. I took a deep breath, remembering the lessons Lucian had taught me. It wasn't just about the fight. It was about being in control of myself, my emotions, and my body. I focused, clearing my mind of the fear that tried to creep in. Then I moved. The first strike came fast, a quick jab toward Lucian's chest. But he anticipated it, sidestepping just in time, his eyes sharp and focused. He moved effortlessly, almost as if he were dancing. I tried again, this time a quick combination of punches aimed at his torso. But Lucian was quicker. He deflected each move with ease, his body fluid and controlled. "You're too predictable," he said, his voice calm. "You're relying too much on your instincts. You need to think." His words stung, but he was right. My movements were based on the rhythm of what I had been taught, not on adapting to the situation at hand. I stepped back, trying to catch my breath. Lucian didn't give me time to recover. He advanced, closing the distance between us in a flash, his fist aimed at my side. I barely had time to react, raising my arm to block the strike. The force of the blow sent a shock wave through my body, but I stood my ground. "You can't think of yourself as just a weapon," Lucian said, his voice low and intense. "You have to become one with the fight. Be present in every moment. Don't just react, anticipate." I nodded, wiping the sweat from my brow. It wasn't just about fighting. It was about being in control of my mind, my body, and my emotions. Lucian wasn't just training me to fight. He was training me to become something more than just a survivor. He was training me to become a warrior. I took another deep breath, readying myself for the next round. This time, when Lucian advanced, I didn't just react. I anticipated his movements, adjusted my stance, and struck before he could reach me. The blow landed, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of approval in Lucian's eyes. "Good," he said. "You're learning." The training didn't stop there. We continued for hours, pushing each other to the limit, my body aching with each move, but my mind growing sharper with each lesson. By the time the night ended, I was exhausted, but I felt something inside me shift. I was no longer just Emily. I was becoming something else. Something strong, something capable. Lucian had given me the tools to survive. And now, it was up to me to use them. The next few days were a blur of training and intense focus. I was no longer just learning the basics. Lucian had pushed me into the deep end, and I had no choice but to swim. Each day, my skills improved, my body stronger, my mind sharper, but the weight of everything I was learning was taking its toll. I had grown accustomed to the physical exhaustion, but the mental fatigue was something new. The more I learned, the more I realized how little I understood about the world I had stepped into. The power within me was vast, unpredictable, and Lucian had been right all along. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about understanding what I was becoming and preparing for what was coming next. I had no idea what kind of future lay ahead, but I knew I couldn't face it unprepared. I had learned how to fight, how to control the energy that flowed within me, but now it was time to face the true test of my abilities. Lucian had been keeping something from me, and I had been too afraid to ask. I could feel it, the tension in the air, the way his gaze lingered on me sometimes, like he was waiting for something. It wasn't just the training anymore. There was something more, something looming on the horizon. I had trained enough to understand that we were preparing for something, but what exactly, I couldn't yet grasp. One evening, Lucian took me to a part of the mansion I had never seen before, a hidden wing, its walls lined with ancient, dusty bookshelves, and the scent of old parchment thick in the air. The dim lighting cast long shadows, and the atmosphere was heavy with a sense of history. Lucian stopped in front of a large, ornate door and turned to face me. "This is where we begin," he said, his voice steady but with an edge of something unspoken. I swallowed, my heart picking up pace. "Begin what?" I asked, though I already had an inkling. "The final part of your training," he said, his eyes intense. "It's time for you to face the truth about who you really are, Emily." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had been expecting something, but this was more than I could prepare for. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a vast chamber beyond, its walls covered in intricate symbols I had never seen before. In the center of the room was a large, stone altar, surrounded by candles that flickered softly, casting eerie shadows across the space. Lucian stepped inside, motioning for me to follow. I hesitated for a moment, but then followed, my feet carrying me forward despite the overwhelming sense of dread building inside me. "What is this place?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Lucian didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked toward the altar and turned to face me. "This is where the real work begins," he said. "This is where you learn to connect with the essence of your power, the part of you that has been dormant until now." I stared at him, confusion and fear swirling inside me. "What do you mean, connect with the essence of my power?" I asked. Lucian's eyes softened slightly. "It's time for you to fully embrace what you are, Emily. You've felt it, haven't you? The power inside you, growing stronger with each day. It's time to learn how to control it, how to use it." I felt a shiver run down my spine at his words. "But I don't know how," I said, almost pleading. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do." Lucian took a step toward me, his voice low and calm. "You already know, Emily. You've always known. You just have to trust yourself. Trust what's inside you." His words were both reassuring and terrifying. I could feel it, the power, the magic, thrumming beneath my skin. It was there, always there, just waiting for me to unlock it. But how? How could I trust something so unpredictable, so dangerous? Lucian extended his hand toward the altar, motioning for me to step closer. "Come," he said. "It's time to face the truth about who you really are." I swallowed, my heart pounding in my chest, but I stepped forward, my feet carrying me to the altar. As I stood before it, I could feel the energy in the room intensifying. The symbols on the walls seemed to pulse with life, and the air grew thick with a sense of ancient power. Lucian's voice echoed in the chamber, though his words were soft, as if he were speaking to me and the room itself. "This is where it begins, Emily. The moment you accept your destiny." I closed my eyes, trying to block out the overwhelming sensations flooding my senses. But the power, so strong, so undeniable, began to seep into every part of me. I could feel it, inside and out, like a force trying to break free. It was raw, untamed, and it terrified me. But deep down, I knew I had no choice. I had to embrace it. Slowly, I placed my hands on the altar, and the moment I did, a surge of energy coursed through me, unlike anything I had ever felt before. The world seemed to spin around me, and I gasped, my body trembling as the power wrapped itself around me. For the first time, I understood what Lucian had meant. This power was part of me, and now I had to learn how to control it. The room seemed to fade away, and all I could focus on was the power flowing through my veins, filling every inch of my being. It was mine to control, mine to wield. And in that moment, I knew that I wasn't just a girl anymore. I was something else entirely. Something that could change everything. The power surged through me, unlike anything I had ever felt before. It was as if the very earth beneath my feet was alive, and I was part of it. I could feel the magic coursing through my veins, filling every part of me, and for the first time, I understood what Lucian had been trying to teach me all along. This wasn't just about survival. It wasn't just about fighting. It was about control, about mastering what had always been within me. The power that had once terrified me was now a part of who I was. As I stood at the altar, my hand still resting on its cool surface, I felt a sense of clarity that I had never known. I wasn't just Emily anymore. I was something more, something stronger. The world around me seemed to quiet, and for a moment, all I could hear was my own breathing and the steady thrum of energy that echoed in my chest. Lucian's voice broke the silence, low and steady. "You're ready," he said. "Now you understand what you are." I slowly withdrew my hands from the altar, my body trembling with the aftershock of the energy I had just tapped into. I looked up at Lucian, my mind racing, with 1,000 questions, but there was no fear in my heart anymore. The power that had once terrified me now felt like a part of me, like a tool I could wield if I only knew how. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm of thoughts swirling inside my mind. Lucian stepped forward, his gaze never leaving mine. "Now, you learn to fight. You learn to protect yourself and those you care about. The time has come for you to face the world that's been waiting for you." His words were like a call to action, and despite the fear that still lingered, I felt a spark of determination ignite within me. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I wasn't the scared girl who had stumbled into a world she didn't understand. I was part of it now. I was a fighter. Lucian led me through the mansion, his presence a steady anchor as we moved through the darkened halls. Every step seemed to echo in the silence, and I realized for the first time that the mansion wasn't just a place of safety. It was a place of war, preparing for the fight that would define everything. We stopped at a door I hadn't seen before. It was heavy, carved with intricate symbols that matched the ones from the chamber. Lucian placed his hand on the door, and it swung open with a low groan. Inside was a small, dimly lit room filled with weapons, swords, daggers, and other instruments of war. But it wasn't the weapons that caught my attention. It was the map on the wall, spread out in front of me like a blueprint of the city. Cities I didn't recognize. Lines drawn across the map in red ink. Lucian stepped beside me, his eyes scanning the map before settling on a spot marked with a heavy circle. "This is where it begins," he said, his voice grim. "The fight you've been preparing for. The people who want your power are already gathering, and you need to be ready to face them." I swallowed, my throat dry. "Who are they?" I asked, fear creeping back into my chest. "The vampire houses. The ones who see your power as something to be controlled, to be used. They will stop at nothing to get to you." I took a deep breath, the weight of his words sinking in. "But I'm not ready," I said, my voice trembling. Lucian turned to face me, his expression soft but serious. "You are more ready than you think. You've been training for this your entire life, Emily. And now, you need to trust yourself." The words felt like a lifeline, but doubt still clung to me. "How do I know I can control it?" I asked, my voice small. Lucian's eyes softened, and he placed a hand on my shoulder. "Because you're stronger than you realize. And you've already proven it. You have the power to change everything. But you need to make the choice to use it." I nodded slowly, the realization sinking in. This wasn't just about defending myself anymore. This was about taking control of my destiny. This was about fighting for my future. Lucian handed me a sword, its hilt cold and familiar in my hand. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a symbol of my choice, a symbol of the battle that lay ahead. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice calm, but with an edge of steel. I looked at the sword in my hand, feeling the weight of it. It was time. I was ready. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. Lucian nodded, his eyes filled with approval. "Then let's begin." The time had come. I wasn't just Emily anymore. I was a warrior, and I was ready to face whatever was coming. I was ready to take my place in this world, to fight for the life I wanted, and to protect everything I had left. This was my fight, my destiny, and I wasn't going to back down. Vampire stories have captivated readers for centuries, weaving tales of power, danger, and forbidden love. In this thrilling journey, follow Emily, a seemingly ordinary girl who is thrust into a world of ancient vampires and untapped power. As she trains under the watchful eye of Lucian, a mysterious vampire, Emily discovers her true potential and the dangers that come with it. Vampire stories like this reveal the hidden world of the supernatural, where danger lurks around every corner, and not all vampires are the same. In this gripping tale, Emily must embrace her new reality, face her fears, and learn to control her power before those who seek to use it for their own gain can destroy everything she holds dear. With dark secrets, hidden magic, and heart-pounding action, this story offers a thrilling take on vampire stories that is sure to leave readers on the edge of their seat. The power struggle, emotional turmoil, and self-discovery in these vampire stories paint a vivid picture of a world where survival is not just about strength, but mastering one's own fate.